Hello and welcome to this episode of the Driven podcast. My name is Sam Parkinson, and today I'm excited to be joined by electrification and EV advocate Sarah Aubrey. For those who aren't already familiar, Sarah is the person behind Electrify This. Her engaging content has garnered a global following across platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. But beyond her digital presence, Sarah actively participates in community initiatives, including her role in Sydney's Inner West Council Local Democracy Transport Group and as the founder of the Electric Vehicles for Australia Facebook group. Sarah has transformed her own Sydney home from a very modest 2.9 star energy rating to a very impressive 10 stars. I'm not sure where the ceiling is, but that sounds quite high. Um, Eliminating gas usage entirely and significantly reducing her electricity consumption from 42 kilowatt hours to just 12 kilowatt hours per day within just 1 year. Sarah, welcome to the Driven Podcast, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You're more than just a commentator in the electric vehicle and electrification space. You're also very active in actually doing a lot of the things that some people can already do to electrify everything, including taking your home from gas guzzling to fully electric. Was there a particular moment, like an aha moment, that made you say, "Okay, you're right, we're doing this"?
Yeah, I listened to the ebook of Saul Griffith's The Big Switch. And there was a little moment in that book where he was talking about electric cars, but he said it was just as effective to electrify your house and get off gas and decarbonize your home as buying an electric car. And at that time, which was 2022, I was like, there was so few chargers in our area. And I just thought, well, we can do that and I can do it right now. And because of COVID, I was no longer going out to studios and traveling as much. I was going from 12,000 Ks a year to, I think I was down to like 3,000. And I thought, well, where am I spending my time? And in winter, this is a classic Federation house, double brick, freezing in winter. Okay, in summer, freezing in winter. And it had ducted air conditioning and a gas heater. And you turn all those things off, and the house would be cold again in 20 minutes. And I thought, this house is just not performing properly. We can fix that problem now. And for a relatively okay sum of money compared to, a knock-down rebuild or knocking the back of the house off and doing a huge renovation. So really, it was listening to that book and just sort of thinking I can do that bit by bit, except I went a little bit mad and did it all in 3 months, like a crazy woman.
3 months.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I without knowing too much about that scenario in terms of how do you tackle making your house more efficient. One of the first things I would imagine you'd go to is just trying to fix the insulation,
Mm.
which is a common issue in Australia if you compare it to a lot of homes in climates like in Europe. But you went kind of beyond that and just went. Did you do that as well, or did you just go, all right, electrification is kind of the answer
No,
here?
the most important thing about making your house more energy efficient is that you don't just electrify, you have to do insulation. Those two things go hand in hand, because you think you have an air conditioner going, it's gonna have to work so much harder if you've got a leaky house with no insulation, whereas if you have an air conditioner going and you've got lots of insulation, it will retain the heat, and of course, if you just set it to a temperature, it will know that the room gets to that heat, it's retaining it, and then it will ramp down and not have to work so hard. And even just cleaning your filters is a big thing you need to remember as well. But yeah, all those things work in tandem, and you kind of have to think about the order that you do things is one of the things that I really considered because we had a lot of electrical work done. We had solar, we had a ceiling fan put in. We had to run a cable for the induction stove. We had to run a cable for the heat pump. And I didn't want to do the top up the blow in roof insulation until we had done all those things. So even though bang for your buck, the roof insulation would have been the best thing to do first up to get the biggest result, I left that till last because I didn't want to mess it up. So and you don't have to do it all at once. I just went crazy. I had the money, I was gonna put it into an electric car, and I decided, "Actually, no, I'm gonna put it into the house first, and then the EV can come later."
Cool. And I mean, it does feel like, I think for a lot of people, a very daunting prospect, the idea of tackling this this problem that a lot of people have around, having energy efficiency within their home. Um, what was in your experience, what was harder than expected in that electrification journey, and what was surprisingly easy?
It was hard figuring out where to start. So I actually got a residential efficiency scorecard assessor to come and assess my home. It was about $500, and it was probably the best money I ever spent because she gave me a short and long-term checklist to go through and things to achieve. And some were, wait for your gas stove to die and then you put an induction stove, but I just wanted to get off gas. So I literally went through that. Probably one of the hardest things to do was find tradies that understood what I was doing. A lot of them were really good once I explained, "Look, I'm trying to close up all the gaps and cracks in the home," but some were frustratingly oblivious and just yeah, you have to just move on to a different tradie, and some are willing to do it. Some will try and talk you out of a heat pump, for example, because gas is obviously a big part of the plumbing business, or they haven't learnt to install them, so they just poo-poo them and say they don't really work, which is completely untrue, and I hear that time and time again, and I had a couple of problems with a couple of tradies just putting in the ducting for the new, exhaust over the stove and, the extraction and, honestly, it was just a bit of a nightmare, and if I wasn't proactive, that would not have ended up how it should have been because they left all these big gaps for the cavity to just make the kitchen freezing cold, and they just didn't even though I told them beforehand, I had to race out and go and get some expanding foam and fix it on the spot, but if I hadn't have done that, it would have been a bit of a mess.
Okay, yeah, it does sound like a bit of a challenge.
Mm.
So were there any particularly easy parts or things that you felt like were easier than expected, or was it generally just a
No,
bit
nearly
of an
everything was easy. All the insulation was easy. Underfloor insulation was easy, the roof insulation was easy. That's just a quick few hours, you're done, and massive results from that immediately. If you time things properly, so if you're changing your gas stove, you get the gas person to get the plumber to come over and disconnect the gas and cap it the day before, and you have your stove there on site, and so when the electrician comes, it's all good to go. You just kind of gotta get organised and make sure you have things in place. I had to wait for the heat pump, for example, so I had ordered that, and there was enough time for that to come, and there was no rush to get rid of the gas, there was nothing wrong with it. Some people might wait until their gas dies, and my advice is do all of your research for a heat pump beforehand, and who your installer is, and to make sure they have things in stock, because what happens is your hot water goes, people panic, they need it done immediately, and a plumber turns up and they go, "Well, I've just got another gas unit in my van, I can just change it over now," and then that's locked in for another 20 years, so it's important to kind of think ahead so you don't get caught out.
yes, I mean, it sounds obvious, but having a plan does
Mm.
help.
Amazing.
A lot of things in life, including electrifying your home, it sounds
Mm.
like. So what is your home setup then at the moment? What have you got?
We have a very small solar array, 4.7 kilowatt solar array. We have an induction stove, a reclaim heat pump. We have 4 very energy efficient, wall split reverse cycle air conditioners, and we have what else do we have? Oh, a battery. We have a Sig Energy battery, which we've just installed. In fact, we have a 24 kilowatt hour battery, but we have just bumped it up to 48 kilowatt hour battery, which is pretty magical, and we're on the wholesale market with Amber, which I'm sure we can talk about, which is a whole different kettle of fish, and yeah, it's performing incredibly well. As you said earlier, we've gone from 42 kilowatt hours a day to about 12, 14, depending on the season. That's over winter. In summer, we use probably 3.5. And our solar isn't big enough to cover and fill the batteries. So because we're on the wholesale market, I buy cheaply in the middle of the day when it's largely renewables and it's cheap. And then when we have price spikes, I sell into the grid. And I've been with them now 4 months. And now we're including some winter months now, so this is the real tell. 4 months with them, no bill yet, and I'm now $650 in credit. So that's with the 24 kilowatt hour battery. So now I've just installed the 48. So the next and during some of those price spikes that really went for a long time, I'd have to sort of step back and pull out because I needed some of that energy to power the home and continue and get through that price spike. So that's a whole really interesting model, the Amber model, which I'm actually a massive fan of.
Yeah, no, I think we'll definitely dig into that a little bit later.
Mm.
You've been a big advocate for electric vehicles online as well, which is obviously a part of the whole sort of electrification landscape. What sparked your passion for that side of the story?
I sat in my friend Dean's Tesla Model S, it would be 10 years ago, and my mind was completely blown. I'd never se I mean, I've always loved driving. My nana had Minis, so I loved, fanging about in that little thing, and I like cars, and I like driving, and I just it was just different to anything else I'd been in, and it was souped up, so we took off, and my stomach lurched, and I was like, "That is bonkers," and the screen and just the tech in it was just so otherworldly, and so I've been interested in it ever since then, and I live near some very busy roads. It's a dirty suburb. It's very dirty in the inner west, and I'm really conscious of pollution, and it's a solution to that. So that's another reason why I really love electric cars, and especially going to China in April. I was just shocked by how clean the streets were and how quiet. It was the quiet, the noise that we put up with, the noise pollution in particular that we endure in Sydney is so shocking. I got back and I'm still really quite shocked by how just what we put up with, and we don't have to.
Mm. Yeah. No, I actually mentioned, I think on an earlier episode of this podcast that my wife had gone to China, to Shanghai for work, and she's no she's not particularly plugged into the whole electrification or electric vehicle field, but she really did take note of the despite a huge amount of traffic, just the lack of noise that comes from that traffic, and it really it really is something that she noticed, and um, equally she noticed the same when she came back here. She was like, "Wow, that's a bit louder than what it probably needs to be."
Mm,
Even just things like getting into, you got a coach waiting in front of your hotel, waiting to would pick you up. Just like the pollution, both noise and air pollution that comes from that. But when it's
mm.
electric, just yeah, and the technology's there.
It's
So I think that's what
it's already
sort of
happening. The future's
yeah,
already here, and it's in China, and
yeah. We're not talking about the Jetsons here. We're talking about things that are actually
A
you know
and there were electric buses everywhere. There were scooters, electric scooters everywhere, sharing dedicated lanes with bicycles, just acoustic bicycles. One way on one side, and then one way on the other side of the road, with fences and lovely plantings just separated, and then the footpath was separated again. They've created this infrastructure for different ways to get around, and that's what I particularly like it, and great public transport, subways underneath the city, and as I said, electric buses everywhere. And I think that accommodation of all different types of transport, electrified, was the most impressive thing as well.
mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, so you said that you were at the Shanghai Auto Show recently. We have a contributor, Riz Akhtar, who also went to China recently. I'm not sure for the same event, but
He did. I can't believe I missed him.
oh, there you go.
So annoyed.
He was there.
He
My
was.
apologies.
He was.
But he, when I asked him about his take on how things are going over there in China, he said, it's basically the future happening now in terms of electric vehicles, and he's always sort of taken back by just how developed they are and are becoming in the electric vehicle and electrification space. What's your take? Do you share that view? In your experience in going to the Shanghai Auto Show, what did you make of what's happening over there?
I 100% agree with him. The future is here, and it's already happening in China, and we just need to catch up. It's as simple as that. I was shocked. I was truly shocked by how advanced China is in terms of electrification, in terms of just the sheer number of electric cars on the roads, but the
Mm,
sheer number of brands I'd never heard of. I was just walking around going, "Never heard of that, never heard of that, never seen that before," and just the volume and the types of vehicles and the fact that sedans are so popular there, that actually blew me away. Primarily on the roads, you see sedans, not SUVs. And I was
mm,
quite shocked by that. I think the thing I took away from the show was the scale, the number of sedans, and that we also sort of saw these kind of very boxy, rugged off-road SUVs. There were a few of those, the ladders on the outside of the vehicle and the spare tire on the back, that kind of idea of going out of the city, but not as much as sedans. And just how the tech in it, like screens that go right across the dashboards, right across, and screens on the brake lights on the back that do all sorts of clever things on the IM motor cars. I'm like, "Huh? What?" And the show I was at was just for press, and it was packed, and that went for days. Just how huge it is, and we pretend here. Some parts of the press pretend, and some parts of, people online pretend it's not happening here, it's not gonna be a thing, but I've seen the future. I've heard the future, it's quiet and it's clean, and I know it's coming. I've seen it.
I think a lot of people who do who might be a little bit skeptical of EV uptake in Australia is that okay, that's fine for
Mm.
China, but in Australia it's just a different kettle of fish, and it's not going to work here. You
Yeah,
know, we've got lots
China's so
of
small.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. You know, you can just get across the country in a couple of hours.
Have
It's
you
it's
ever
no
driven
problem.
across the Nullarbor? Because I never have. I
No,
mean,
I
come
haven't.
on.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
never even
yeah.
driven to Melbourne. The furthest I go would be Canberra. I'm in Sydney, Newcastle, maybe a little bit further, and then, I don't know, I'd go as far as Wollongong, Port Campbell. I just don't drive further than that. And I don't think
Mm.
people think they buy a car on the idea they might do something. And I say buy a car that suits 95% of your needs. If you need a smaller car because parking is difficult where you live, don't go and buy a ginormous car because you might once a year go on a 2-week trip. The money you'll save with an electric car, you can go and hire a car for your trip.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I think I mean, I definitely agree. We do love SUVs here in Australia. We do love the idea that we might use it to go camping. But people also just really like it. Just even if they don't have plans to go camping, they just want to drive 3 kilometers
I'll
from.
tell you why they love it, because they have been convinced and advertised to for the last 10 years that they should be driving an SUV. When was the last time you saw an ad for a small car? You just don't see it, right? Every ad you see on TV for a car is for a big SUV or a big ute.
It's a nice Suzu X.
D-Max giant thing, and usually sponsoring big sporting events, and they're everywhere, and they tap into a certain, male identity, and we have just spent decades doing that, and now it's just getting worse and worse and worse, and we're in an arms race for a bigger and bigger vehicle. But I look around the inner west and I see all the cars around here are 10, 15 years old, and they're Toyota Echoes or Corollas. They're small cars. They're 4.2, 4.3 meters long. What happens when everyone goes out, and even with EVs, goes out and buys a 4.6, 4.7, 4.8 meter long car? You lose all this on-street parking where I live, where 67% of people can't charge at home. So it's also, I think we need to look at the size of vehicles as well as electrifying, and that it isn't just all about cars. It is also about finding other modes of transport, like, is it electric scooters and electric motorbikes? Is it bicycles and e-bikes? Is it public transport, making our cities more walkable so that 60% of journeys that we do that's under 5 kilometres, we have an option and a choice to do it a different way, which means we're happier, we're healthier, we save with health savings, our roads are quieter and cleaner, congestion improves. We can't just replace every car now with an EV because congestion is terrible. So I think we need to think more holistically across the board and not just think, okay, we'll just replace that with an EV, because I don't think that's
Yeah,
the solution.
no, I think it's a very good point. Um, but it seems like we're still kind of stuck even on that first kind of checkpoint of realizing that EVs are uh, even now an attainable option for people who are looking to buy new vehicles. The prices have come down a lot. There's still a bit to go, I think, but judging from what you're seeing over there, as you said in Shanghai, it's just a matter of time before that. We see more of those models that you said you've never seen before come to Australian shores.
Yeah, and I hope we see some of those cheaper models coming. There's talk of the BYD Seagull coming here. I think if we start getting cars that have a 3 in front of it, so 30 something thousand dollars would be great. The secondhand market is developing, and we are seeing cars now in that 30 something thousand bracket when you see MG4s or Dolphins maybe as secondhand vehicles. But that's still a lot of money for people. That's still, I
Mm.
mean, I think people forget how much internal combustion engine cars cost new now. But I think once we see that parity with internal combustion engine, oh, I think it's all over.
Mm, mm. And we're getting pretty close, I think. So, um, you mentioned that kind of broader sort of look, more broader view as to more of a holistic approach to solving that broader transport issue. It's not just about replacing every Land Cruiser with with a Kia EV9 or
Mm.
anything like that. It's got to be it's got to be a bit more holistic than that. You've got some experience, you know, engaging with local communities. What kind of shifts are you seeing at the community or council
Well,
level?
I will, point out I'm no longer on the you do it for a certain number of years, and I'm not on the next round. But in
Okay.
my time on that group, it was interesting. It was a little bit frustrating because the question would always be posed at the beginning of every time we got together. How can we get more people into electric cars, and how can we encourage active transport? And I'm like, well, it's pretty obvious. You need more chargers, and you need to actually make it safe to ride, because Inner West Council is not safe to ride in the majority. It's a huge council, and it's not safe to get around. I live quite close to the city of Sydney, which is fantastic, and so I get to make use of that a lot. But frankly, it's not safe, and the choice isn't really there. So I think the will is there, but whether they're willing to move quickly on it, I don't know. Um, I'm a big proponent of gully charging, so as another option. So you have pole charging, you have DC chargers, and I think gully charging is a massive part, in areas like this at least, a massive part of the puzzle. I think we need any and all solutions where you cut a gully into the footpath and you slot in this little metal tray that has a lid, that has a hinge on it, so it's completely flat, and then it's not a trip hazard, and you just run your cable out of your house, close it up, and then you take it back inside when you're done. So Inner West Council have actually been trialling, which good on them, they're the only council that's doing it, trialling a footpath license where I'm allowed to run a cable out of my house with a cable cover over it. You have to have public liability, so it would only be open to people who own their own home, and then you have to display your footpath license while you're charging, so that stops the nanas from complaining, which is great. So I'm allowed to do that. They've extended that for another year. It's been wildly popular. It's been going for 18 months. Whenever I post about it, the trolls complain about it, how it's a trip hazard, and I'm like, well, if we'd made it permanent with gully charging, it wouldn't be. And in the UK, they've done it through loads and loads of councils. It's hugely popular because so many people in the UK can't charge at home, and it's definitely needed because there will never, I can't stress this enough, never be enough public chargers in an area like this where 67% of households can't charge at home. So if we want real uptake, you need any and all solutions rather than just one or the other.
Actually, I did walk past one of those in Leichhardt the other day in a suburb in
Mhm.
Sydney, and that was the first time I'd actually seen it. And I thought, oh, I wasn't. My initial reaction was, should I get upset about this? I mean, maybe. Um, but then I
Funny,
realized,
isn't it? It's
actually, no.
like, how do I feel about that being on the footpath? But I mean, people go, "Oh, a cable cover's not safe," and I'm like, does that mean you think no cable covers are safe? Like, would you go to an event and worry that there's a cable cover on the ground and go, "That shouldn't be there"?
Mm,
I mean, it's
mm,
like, come on. So, and here's my point, right? Let me make this point. When someone puts a driveway in, they privatize that parking spot out the front of their house effectively. In fact, more than one parking spot, because you need to be able to turn in and out of a driveway. So it's more like a parking spot and a half. That is privatized. That is public space, a public parking spot, which is taken away by that home. That's apparently fine. But I go, you don't lose that parking spot. It stays available on the street. I have the choice of one of three parking spots because my cable's so long. If that was made permanent with gully charging, it's not a trip hazard. No one loses out, and the parking spot is still available for everyone to use. I see that as a positive thing. That wouldn't apply everywhere, and there'd be parts of the inner west where maybe parking's at such a premium it wouldn't work. But where I live in the inner west, I can usually get park out the front of my own house or close to.
yep, yep, yep. No, it seems to make sense. We'll have to coin a new term for not on my footpath or something like that.
Please don't.
No, I don't want to start that. So we in Australia, just talking about EV uptake, we did reach 10% of new car sales last
Mhm.
month. So, how, in your view, how significant is this for Australia? Is this a significant milestone, or is this just a bit of just a data blip,
I
really?
think my frustration with that number is that they're better than that because not everyone reports their numbers. It is wildly frustrating that it's not actually accurate. So the numbers would be better than that, and they would have been better than that in the past. Like Xpeng don't report their numbers. There's other car makers that don't do it as well. And I don't even
Mm,
know within models, like with the Kona, for example, I don't know that they specify in their sales that it's EV versus hybrid or petrol. So it
right.
is frustrating, and I think there should be I think we should be reporting to the Electric Vehicle Council electric vehicle sales. That's something that should happen rather than the FCAI and the EBC just for Polestar and Tesla. Look, a month, we can't, I think, jump to conclusions about a month. I think when we start seeing a quarter that's over 10%, that will be really heartening. We were close to that the month before in May, so June is over 10%, so that's great. I think the Tesla Model Y sales obviously have helped that, which is nice to see actually that not everyone cares about US politics, and I still think it's a great car and a great company. CEO aside, don't think what he's doing is great, but I think that it's a shame that that brand has been so damaged. But it is good to see. I'm seeing loads of Model Ys on the road, which is great to see.
Yes. Yeah. No, I've been seeing lots of them as well.
Nice looking car.
They are a nice looking car. Yeah. Yeah. I think that upgrade's definitely one where I thought, oh, that's actually a pretty decent upgrade. From the brief interaction I had with it, but we did have Giles and Riz do a proper report on that on the Driven for those who haven't yet read it. So that's obviously been a contributing factor to last month's sales data. Is there anything? I mean, do you think there's much else that's driving growth, if we can call it, in EV sales here? Is it?
Money, money, savings. Honestly, I think we can see as much. It doesn't help that we have hit pieces in mainstream media and lots of mis and disinformation online, but you know what? It's not working because people are now seeing their neighbours have got an EV and they're going for a ride in it, and it's so quiet and clean, and they really like the ride, and they love the instant torque, and then they see, "Hang on, you've got solar," and they're going, "Yeah, our fuel costs are essentially 0 now," and it's that conversation that's
Mm,
happening despite all that other stuff. So I actually think it is money, and people are doing the numbers now and going, "You know what? It just makes sense. Makes financial sense." And eventually, people are probably thinking, "Oh, vehicle to grid will be coming online. I'll be able to power the house and make money with my car." That's another thing that people are thinking about down the track. But honestly, I just think it's the numbers. And some people, obviously, their kids. My friend of mine just got an Atto 3, and his daughter, who's a teenager, is it was so thrilled and really convinced him to go electric. So I think kids even they're doing it for their kids. Potentially for their
mm.
future. So I think the environmental stuff is there. It might not be the major factor, but it is a factor. But I think honestly, people are doing the sums and just going without uptake of solar. If you've got solar on your roof, even if you don't, it's just so much cheaper.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly true.
What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that it is the familiarity thing, isn't it? I think if you know someone that has got an electric vehicle, you might actually start to consider that concept a little bit more seriously than if you just kind of feel like it's a bit of an abstract kind of
Mm.
thought that there are some it's for tech tycoons and people in China, but yeah, I think the more the uptake happens, it's a bit it's a bit of a snowball effect, and the more familiarity people will have firsthand through friends and family that might have one, and then it's just that process of demystifying and
Oh,
clarifying
oh, what do you
the
mean they
misconception.
don't catch fire? Like, it's that sort of thing, like, you can go, "No." What but the battery only lasts 3 no, and they can counter that with their own car and sort of show that it's not real. But also I think seeing them on the road, seeing so many electric cars on the road also makes a really big difference. I think they're like, "Oh." And I think that's the same with if the more and more chargers we see, particularly in an area like this, people will go, "Oh, there's a charger there and a charge. Oh, okay, maybe I could buy an electric car because there are lots of places to charge them." And I think that actually does need to happen before people feel confident enough to buy an electric car, if you can't charge at home.
Yes, which as we've noted, for many people, and especially living in cities, that is the case. I live in an apartment. I have an electric car. I've never been able to charge at home.
Mm,
And when I bought my Hyundai, I wasn't really too sure how that was going to go. I thought, oh, I'll just roll the dice, and it's actually been fine. But it is getting better, that's for
mm.
sure, and easier, especially with curbside charging, which is something I think we want to explore a little bit more later on. I was going to ask what if you think that we're building enough charging infrastructure to support this growth, and what are the biggest barriers for wider EV adoption? But I think I've kind of answered the question already. It's about building more. I mean, are we building enough? What are we doing enough to support this uptake, or are we lagging
I
still a
think
little bit?
it depends where you are, right? So if you live in an area where most people can charge at home, so for the further out you go, where the majority of people have driveways, then it's fine. And I think often I talk about this issue because I don't have a driveway, but 80% of Australian drivers can charge at home, so it's a complete non-issue. And I actually think amongst the EV community, it is a bit of a blind spot in that it does apply to not a huge group of people. And when I've brought it up in the Electric Vehicles for Australia group, people go, "Oh, I just wouldn't buy an electric car if I couldn't charge at home." And I'm like, "That is not an answer. That is not
Mm.
an answer. Please, come on. Give me some solutions here. We need to do better than that." And I look, we don't need DC chargers everywhere, and the grid wouldn't be able to facilitate that anyway. I think the more we have 22 kilowatt chargers on lampposts, the better. As I said, that gully charging. I mean, right now I'm so busy. I'm going to the hospital twice a day. There's no charging at the car park at RPA. And I can't someone said, "Oh, well, there's a charger, like, way down there." I mean, I went to emergency, for 17 hours. How am I to go now and go and move the car from the ambulance bay? I just took it straight to the car park. I'm gonna go find a charger at 2 o'clock in the morning, park it there, come back, and then a few hours later, you know what I mean? Like, it's just stupid. So we need any and all solutions. There could be trickle charges there, and it would be such a little draw for them. I think it would be possible, and people would pay for it. I've seen lots of EVs in that car park. And I think we need, as I said, lots and lots of options and future proofing. I know Ausgrid want to put chargers on every pole, and I think, honestly, if you want to have proper uptake in an area like this, you're going to have to do that. And there are, of course, companies that go, "We don't want that because we want using our chargers," and they have a commercial interest in people just using their chargers. But I'll give you a classic example. There's a charger near my house, at Marrickville Metro. Now that's the nearest DC charger. They're really the only ones that, and there's some 22 kilowatt chargers there that are free, so you count them out because you can never get on them, right? It's free parking.
Yeah,
Forget it.
I know firsthand.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, forget it. Um, so there's 2 DC chargers there, they're tritium chargers, and they're terrible. So the right-hand one, the CCS2, is just always broken. It's continuously breaking. So you've got one charger servicing people. Now, when I go down there and do my shop once a week at the supermarket, that's the perfect time to go down and charge the car. And I had just found out that my partner has leukemia. Went down there, picked up an EV actually, so they loaned me BMW loaned me a car, and I thought, "Okay." Sorry, at that point it was Jeep. Jeep loaned me a Jeep Avenger, picked it up and he had 25% in the car. So we were on watch to go, "We gotta go to the hospital at any moment." So I was like, "I'm just gonna top up the car because we could go at any minute." So I plugged into this EV charger, went down to the shop. It was 20 minutes. I thought, "I'll just top it up, that'll be fine. It doesn't need to be full, just something." Came back, went to disconnect from the app, couldn't disconnect. And I started to panic because I was so stressed, like, so stressed, and I was like, "This is not what I need." And it's not my car, so I'm like, "Okay, now I could probably pull off the plate and, disconnect it manually." Oh, I couldn't find it, couldn't work it out. And I thought, "This is what people fear with electric car ownership." So, I had to get on the phone to them. I had 23% left on my battery. I was like, "Okay, I'm in a car park. Do I have signal?" Called them up, got put on hold. I'm on hold for about 5 minutes. So I'm already from my looking around and my being on hold for 5 minutes, I'm already charging 10 minutes longer than I want to. I need to get out of here. I can't because I can't disconnect the car. So then finally I get through to someone in a call center overseas, doesn't care, had to ID the charger, and then she disconnected it and she said, "Yeah, this is a known problem." And I'm like, "That is not good enough. That is not good enough." So your charger's broken a lot of the time, and this is a known problem. Plus, you didn't go, "Oh, we'll reimburse you for that extra 10 minutes that you were faffing about," or something. They're like, "Oh, okay." And then they sent me a, "What did you think of your charge?" And I blinking told them what I thought of the charge. But that's the problem. That's the message you put out there, and if that's still happening, that is bad. That's really bad, and I was so stressed, and I thought, "Lots of people are stressed and they're busy," and I couldn't leave. I was trapped and stuck. That's not good enough.
No, yeah, for sure. I think it's treating public chargers like some sort of extra luxury in case you need it. So if you can't charge at home, yeah, it's for a lot of people that's actually
It's their only
their
way of doing
fundamental.
it.
Yeah, yeah. So it needs to improve. We're going to take a very quick break for for those who you tune in just for the ads, your time has come. But for the rest of you, stay tuned and we'll be back with Sarah right after this. You're back with the Driven podcast with your host, Sam Parkinson, and our special guest, Sarah Aubrey. Sarah, your channel, Electrify This, discusses more than just EVs, which we've touched on before. And I've seen on your channel you've been talking about your experience using Amber's platform. For those who may not, who may find the concept of a virtual power plant somewhat abstract, could you give us a very quick summary of what a VPP is and what it means for a household participating in one?
I am by no means an expert on this, but from my understanding, let's say you're with a traditional retailer and you have fixed tariffs, as one does, and you decide to buy a battery. That retailer will offer you a sum of money as an incentive to let them have control of your battery. And usually they will dispatch power at peak times when everyone comes home and turns everything on. So you get given some kind of financial incentive to allow them to take control of your battery. Amber's a bit different in that you are on the wholesale market. So for starters, the pricing is very, very different. A lot of the time during the middle of the day, it's very, very cheap. In the evening, it becomes more expensive. And at certain times, maybe once every 2, 3 months, you'll have something called a price spike when prices can go anywhere up to over $20 a kilowatt hour. So I would personally not join Amber unless I had a battery to protect myself during those times. But during those times is when you sell. So I think you are rewarded much more being with Amber on that market. It's much they don't take a profit. Their only margin they make is on their membership, and you're just getting wholesale pricing. And so I like their version of a VPP, which is called Smart Shift. So they have 2 versions of a VPP. The first one is for the crazy kamikaze people who want to make as much money as possible, Casino Royale. It's called a battery optimizer. It will at least fill and discharge your battery at least once a day. So I actually prefer Amber's version of a VPP, which is first and foremost, you can take control or you can even turn it off if you want. So that's the first thing. A lot of people don't actually like VPPs, and only less than 20% of Australians actually have signed up to a VPP, people with a battery, that is, because they don't like that someone's got control of your battery and you have to let go of that, right? They don't like someone else doing that. So Amber, you can take control, you can turn it off, you can intervene at any time with their Smart Shift, which is their version of a VPP. So they have 2 versions. One is the earnings optimizer, so that's for the kamikaze, go crazy, Casino Royale, make as much money as possible, and they'll charge and discharge your battery at least once a day. And then there's the more conservative version, which I'm on, which is the battery booster, which is you keep your battery mostly full, and really I only sell during price spikes. I can change that to either of those things any time of the day, or I could turn it off, or I can intervene and say it's in a price spike and it's selling, and I go, oh no, I need a bit more of that for my house. I can literally just go control battery, consume for the next 2 hours. So it's fantastic. I think as a consumer, you're much more rewarded. In fact, I've been with them for 4 months now, and we've covered June and May, so cold months. I have not paid a bill since I've joined them. I've got a 24 kilowatt hour battery, and I'm $650 in credit because I've just sold during price spikes. Last month, I made $440 during the price spikes. So
Oh,
bonkers, right? So this is, I think, the model of the future. And Amber just make money from their membership, so they're not putting things on top of your tariffs to make it more expensive. During those peak times, I'm still on time of use, so 3 p.m., it gets expensive. It can be 50, 70 cents a kilowatt hour on average, but because my house, the AI kicks in, the smart shift kicks in, so at 3 p.m., the house is being run off the battery.
hmm.
So it's
Wow.
brilliant. I mean, it's the future, and people will do that. We can extrapolate that and go, well, batteries are getting cheaper, so people will get bigger and bigger batteries, or they'll use their car with vehicle to grid and they'll make money. And it's already happening in the UK. Octopus Energy have got that deal with it's for less than £300 a month. You can have a BYD Dolphin, free charging at home as long as you're willing to plug your car in at a certain time, a certain number of days in a month. Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah, we touched on that actually. We had Ed Lynch Bell rather, that who was who's contributor to the Driven, and he was writing about his experience over there in the UK. And he actually doesn't even own a car, but he's very interested in in the in that whole sort of development with V2G. Um, but in terms of your experience with Amber, so that's just to clarify, they charge a registration fee,
A membership
which
fee, which is now $25 a month,
okay, and that's their way of making money. Okay, and in return, you're getting the amount of control that you want to have,
and
really.
access to the wholesale market pricing rather than fixed tariffs,
So you can kind of leave it on autopilot if you
if you want
want,
to.
or you can effectively become like a full time sort of stock
Psycho.
trader in the energy market.
Become
You know,
an energy trading psycho. Yes, you can do that if you want to. Some people employ automation themselves, so they do Home Assist, I think it's called, and there's different things you can use. I don't do that, so I pretty much just let SmartShift do its thing. And
okay,
I've just actually, literally a couple of days ago, took advantage of the federal government rebate, so batteries now are 30% cheaper, which is amazing. And I've just taken advantage of bumping up my 24 kilowatt hour system to 48 kilowatt hours. But that bill, that $650 credit, is all with a 24 kilowatt hour battery over 2 very cold months and 1 not so cold month.
mm. It- solar is not solar uptake in Australia has not really been an issue. It's as we know, it's really high, and
Mm.
so but there has been a lot of problems with with feeding tariffs and the way in which the market operates. And
This can do curtailment through the app, so it can curtail your solar, but I actually see it as a public service to charge from the grid in the middle of the day because so much of our solar is curtailed because there's too much of it, because we can't obviously ramp down those coal generators, and I'm like, "Well, it's probably a good thing I'm charging in the middle of the day," and certainly it is extraordinary to see pricing. I mean, I've only seen the end of summer, but some of the price or spring, some of the pricing was 65%. It shows you in the app, 65% of the grid right now is renewables, and you're paying 5 cents a kilowatt hour or 6 cents.
mm,
You never see
mm,
that price with coal
mm.
overnight. But I wanna know what's happening in the grid when you see 20 something dollars a kilowatt hour. Is that a gas peaker plant, kicking in? And I love putting my clean, semi-clean, mostly from my solar, or at least from mostly solar in the middle of the day. I love putting that into the grid at that peak time, pushing out those fossil fuels and supporting the grid, and that is absolutely what we need. That is the future. If we really wanna sort out renewables in this country, we all need to be contributing with our behind the meter storage, with big batteries, with wind, which we can obviously use in the evening and night as well. And we have so much solar already. We need to, the fact that it's curtailed drives me absolutely bonkers. I can't believe it. Like, it's just not a known thing, and I'm like, What is the point?" So you're much better off because feed-in tariffs are now getting so tiny and in some cases negative. We'll be saying, I think we will see that in the future in particular. Why wouldn't you store that and use it for later? So you're taking pressure off the grid and you can feed in as well and support it. That's brilliant.
Well, I was going to ask what would, for someone listening who's thinking, is this something I want to do? I was going to ask you, Sarah, what are the benefits for a household? But from what I'm hearing, empowerment and control over what's happening with your energy.
You become an energy trader, an energy generator, and you feel more independent. So I've had 2 power cuts, which rarely happen in my area. I've had 2 power cuts since I've got that battery. We're the only house in the street with lights on. It was instant. It was like that. The battery just kicked in. The speakers, we were watching TV, just went, and that was the only tell that something had changed. And it tells you that, we call our battery event horizon, and it says event horizon is off grid, and you've got so many hours. Even with one aircon going in the TV, I think it said you've got like 46 hours or something. And I think if we turned the aircon off, it would be days. So even that is so great to have.
Yep, yep. Um, so having that control, and then also just purely financial payback. I mean, it's important to note that it's not something, buying a battery even with subsidies is something which isn't accessible to everyone. There are upfront costs, and so it's not something which is going to be a valid option for a lot of people, but for those where financially they can make those upfront costs,
Mm.
there are financial benefits
If
that
you
can
think
come from.
about paying your energy upfront, but also you don't necessarily need to get a really big battery like I've got and then sell, right? If you just get a battery that's smaller, that you just want to get over that demand tariff or that time of use tariff peak time from 3 to 9, 10 p.m., if you just run your home at that time, that actually does make financial sense when batteries are 30% cheaper. You don't need a huge battery for that. So it really depends. Do you want to be on the wholesale market? Do you want to go on a VPP? You don't have to do either of those things. You could just buy it just to power your own home and give yourself some independence that if there was a blackout, potentially you'd be able to keep the house going.
Mm, mm. And other retailers apart from Amber who are offering the same kind of service at the
No, I don't
moment?
think anyone else offers wholesale
Okay,
prices.
wholesale.
Mm.
Okay, good to know. And just to clarify, this we are not. There's no
No one's paying
payment.
me. They should because I've done enough, videos for them, but, I do it because I think it's the future model or there's some kind of version of it. I think people are unaware what wholesale prices are, and that a lot of the time when we're paying a fixed tariff, they're making a lot of money off us especially in the middle of the day, and I think that it empowers consumers to take control and to reduce their bills. I mean, I was paying bills like everyone else. I think last winter we were paying $300 a month because pricing it, even though we were using so much less energy, prices had gone up. I mean, we didn't have a gas bill anymore, so in that sense we were saving, but it was not much less than what we were paying 2, 3 years ago on a flat tariff of 22 cents a kilowatt hour. So, now what's that? 3 months, 4 months no bill. Let's say over winter, 3 let's say $1,000 saving plus $650 in credit, you can actually see that you do start to potentially pay that off. Now, you
Yeah,
won't
yeah, yeah.
make that kind of money every season, but I'm gonna guess that summer will be similar to winter, potentially. There'll be spikes in the evening when everyone turns their air conditioners on. You can, if you're trading in that way, pay that battery off if you've got enough. You just need a bit bigger, I think, to sort of power the home and sell. Unless you wanna turn everything off and just leave it and go, "I'm going out for a walk."
Yeah. So you see VPPs. Would be fair to say you see virtual power plants being sort of a few in a future grid dominated by renewables. Are they an essential part of the makeup, or are they just one of many
I
tools?
think they'll be essential, but I think you need to reward consumers properly. I think you need to make it worth their while, and I don't think traditional retailers are doing that at this point with VPPs, and that's why you've got less than 20% uptake. I think you need to be able to take over and say, "Nope, I'd like to take over at this moment because I want that energy for myself." You don't wanna be left with too little for your home, you know? I think maybe as batteries get bigger, maybe it won't be as much of a problem. Certainly, it won't be a problem when people have cars because those batteries are so big, there'll be plenty there to sell, power your home, and be able to drive to work the next day. So that in that sense, VPPs will work brilliantly with vehicle to grid. But I think retailers need to reward people. They have spent the money on a battery. You're cycling that battery constantly, which means it only has a certain number of cycles. Sure, a lot of these are LFP batteries now, they have a lot of cycles in them, but still, that has a cost, and I don't know that their reward quite reflects your outlay and the cost enough.
Okay. Uh, Speaking of V2G, is that something that you're currently doing? Do you have a vehicle
I don't
that
have a
does?
driveway.
You don't have a
That's why I've got a
driveway.
big battery because I'm like, "Well, that's not an option." In fact, I don't own a car either. We're still in the market for an electric car. Yeah, we have a frustration of, we don't want a big SUV. So immediately it greatly reduces the choice on the market for us, or a ute, which there's not many utes. Um, but we're hatch people, right? So there's not much choice. And we also have the frustration of the position of the charge port being on the wrong side nearly all the time. So often the charge port is on the driver's side, and on our very narrow street, that is just an that's just an accident waiting to happen with the trucks that come down our street. So we are quite limited in terms of we still do as long as the footpath charging continues, but even if we wanna utilize pole chargers, it's the same issue, right? I do find it weird as well with pole chargers that people go, "That's safe to have a cord running, the cable running all over the place to charge your car from a electricity pole because it's a company doing that, that's okay. Whereas if I put a cable cover over the footpath, that's apparently not okay. I just find that extraordinary. Anyway,
If the professionals are doing
side
it, it's
note.
fine.
But yeah, the position of the charge port is something not really talked about, very often, and, BYDs, they have it on the driver's side. Kia have it on the driver's side. It's really frustrating.
I mean, I've got a Hyundai and I've got it on the driver's side too, and I do find it frustrating sometimes. I know I've complained about this before, and sorry for those who have heard me complain about it, but just sometimes there's two spots for a curbside charger, but only one of them I can use because I can't
Reached
park against the against the flow
the
of
car,
traffic.
yeah.
So I just can't use it. I mean, so a lot of the time it's just too far. So yeah, it can be frustrating. So yeah, okay. Well, so you don't have the capacity for VTG obviously at the moment. Do you have any thoughts generally though about vehicle to grid in terms of its role? Australia's grid is already facing challenges around stability and peak demand. Do you think that V2G could be part of that solution, or is that overselling it?
Oh, I think it
Do you have a
is the solution in many ways, certainly in our cities, because 'cause you're generating that energy right then rather than putting it somewhere else and having to transport it in. So, yes, the more we can become energy generators in our city rather than one big power source, if we decentralize and we treat it like a fishing net in our cities rather than one big fishing line going out to some big coal generator, um, I think it's essential, but yeah. I don't know. It's happening. It's happening right now. The F-150 in Essential Energies region, if you have that and you have a SIG Energy battery with the bidirectional DC 25 kilowatt DC charger, you can do it right now. And Ausgrid have approved it too. So if you wanna do it right now, you can do it. And Amber have a trial program. Sorry to talk about Amber again. Again, not being paid. They have a EV trial. It's Amber for EVs, so there's people right now in South Australia who have Nissan Leafs, and they are making a mozza, and they're thrilled. So, it's happening. It's just, the charges are expensive. It's infancy, but I think we're gonna see that just go gangbusters very, very soon. And I think a lot of people in their car purchasing, they're wondering, "Is that car gonna be vehicle to grid capable?" And really, they probably are, but well, the majority well, we know the BYD Dolphin is, for example. Um, will the car makers allow it? And I think they will, and I think it'll be interesting to see who really gets in there first, because to me, it is a huge marketing opportunity to go vehicle to grid ready. People will buy that car, and who first across the line is smart in my book. So if it's got vehicle to load, surely. Come on. Come on, car makers. Come
yeah.
on.
Well, the Hyundai I've got has vehicle to load, not vehicle to grid, but it's I haven't used it as much as I want to, but I really ought
Just
to.
wait for oh, no, you're in an apartment, so it's probably hard, isn't it? If you have a power failure, just go out in the street and do some cooking.
Just make myself a cup of tea
Just
in the
go down there
backyard.
and make a cuppa.
So in terms of how technically difficult or expensive it is now for the average EV owner to set up a V2G at home, it's still, by the sounds of it, there's still a little bit of a way to go in terms of making that really accessible to
I
EV
I
owners.
think only
Is that
only with the actual charger itself being expensive, that's it. I mean, every all the DNSPs are coming to the party, so I don't actually think it's a big issue. I think they're realizing, "Oh, that actually will be a positive for us because we're gonna have more batteries available to us to plug in and support the grid during peak." So it's to their advantage to get that going and to support it.
yeah? Okay, all right. Um, I just want to touch back before we wrap up. I just want to go back to curbside charging because it's such a big part of the overall kind of solution, in terms of having equitable access to charging for those who need it. How how are we gonna how are we gonna make sure that curbside chargers are rolled out equitably and not just in wealthier in urban areas? Do you have a view on how that we can make sure that that's kind of being rolled out in a way which is equitable?
Well, I guess in that sense, if the DNSP does it, the distribution network service provider does it, that will be the cheapest way to do it. Where if we all kind of subsidize that, I think it's only something like 50 cents per person or something. It's not a huge outlay. They'll maintain them, which is the big thing, right? We're talking about whether a charger is maintained. It's important that happens. I think the volume of them, then it won't matter. You won't need to spend money on marking bays and putting in signage. Again, that adds cost. When you have like an EVX, then they've got to pay the council money, so it makes it more expensive. I actually think it's cheaper than if for the Osgrid, I think it's 35 cents or something versus 50. I do actually think one of the big issues I have personally with that model is that there is an inherent inequity in the haves and have-nots. If you have a driveway, you can go on an EV plan and charge for 8 cents a kilowatt hour overnight, or you can charge for free from your solar. If you don't have a driveway, you're paying minimum, let's say that Osgrid, which is not there's not many of those around, 35 cents to 75, 80, 90, you know what I mean? Like, it's so much more. It's 5 times more you could essentially be paying, if not more. When we all go to the petrol bowser, we are all equal, and that is not the case when it comes to electric cars. How do we address that? Because there is an inequity to that.
Yeah, no, that's such a good question. We are all paying the same in terms of gas, but yeah, I mean it isn't the running costs of having an EV, as we know, are less than the running costs of having a gas vehicle, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it should be just a little bit cheaper for some and a whole lot cheaper for others, depending on what kind of home and what kind of access you have to charging. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
I think
Public.
in the middle of the day, I think we should encourage the uptake and charging of electric cars in the middle of the day. So that means not just putting the onus on federal, state, and local government to put in public chargers. We should be encouraging employers, so when people drive to work and they leave their car all day potentially, they can charge at work, and that's an incentive they can offer employees. So again, you have all these big buildings that have no solar on the roof that could be charging cars for their employees during the day, and that's something that we could offer as well, so that you take that pressure off those areas like this where there aren't many driveways and there aren't many chargers. So I think that's another any and all solutions, I always say, because there is no one answer. And of course, there are going to be businesses that have a commercial interest in wanting to stop more chargers going in because people won't necessarily use their chargers. But the EVX chargers are marked bays, and I've got a much better chance of getting a charge there than I have from an unmarked bay from an Osgrid charger. And they don't want to be the CPO either. So they don't wanna be the person doing the retail side of it. They just wanna they go, "It's our pole. We wanna own the charger and maintain it, and the person that wants to run that charger does it." And you keep costs down by making it an app or an RFID rather than doing it with a credit card, which again adds cost. But yeah, I honestly, the more you see chargers around, the more you'll be like, "Oh, well, then it is an option. Okay, and if that one's taken on that pole, I'll go to the next pole." But there's obviously a lot of people that have a lot of commercial interest in stopping that because they want a captured audience, as they probably would wanna stop, all of them, gully charging because I wanna take advantage of my solar, and I wanna take advantage of my cheap energy that I am generating in my home to charge my car.
Yeah, and that shouldn't be just available exclusively to those with a nice driveway or garage. 100%. So I think my final question was going to be about what needs to happen next, but it feels like there's just so many layers and different levels of governments, councils, utilities, even even the private sector. There's so many small things that kind of need to happen um, in order for the bigger picture to kind of in terms of how we make things are more accessible and easier for EV uptake and for equitable charging. Um, so is it just a case of like a snowball effect? When waiting for some like it's going to be up to the councils to roll out some EV chargers. It's going to be then that's going to encourage businesses to try and offer incentives to employees for charging during the day.
And shopping centers, supermarkets, places that people are spending, a certain period of time where topping up once a week. But it's also like you said, with those Ampol chargers, there needs to be enough of them that you feel confident I'm not gonna go down and do my weekly shop and then be like, "I can't charge," and then, "Oh, what time am I gonna be able to come back now? When should," and then wait. I'd like to be able to go and I know it's available, I've got a good chance of getting on it, and I do it then, which is convenient because you charge while you're doing something else. And I think we've spent a lot of time focusing on regional travel, on those long distance travel out of our cities, between our cities, and not enough time on our inner cities. And we're starting to do it now, but it's just so little. "Oh, yeah, we've got 160 charges going in the Inner West Council." Not one of them's near me. It's just a drop in the ocean. And I'm so thrilled that they're doing the footpath license because there's clearly a need for it and a veracity to be able to charge at home. It is amazing to plug that car in and be able to go, "Oh, God." No, honestly, if you have a driveway, you are nuts not to get an electric car because when I go to my mum's and she's got a driveway and I plug in, I go, "Oh my God, so easy. This is ridiculous. This is so simple. Why on earth wouldn't you do it?"
Are there any other councils who've done that in terms of that trip
No,
charging?
I think there was a council in maybe Port Melbourne that did the pop-up one, but which was wildly expensive, and I think they abandoned it because it was like 6, 7 grand or something to put one in, which is just nuts. I think I like this option because it costs very little. The price would be on me, the cost would be on me, the onus would be on me to put that in. Um and I think if you make it a price that's not prohibitive, if I can't get that parking spot, I'm not gonna lose my mind. Whereas if I'd spent 7 grand on a pop-up charger and someone parked their car there, you you'd go nuts. So I think if you make it, and as I said, I've got the option of 3 parking spots, so the options are there. And if I then I'd go to a public charger if I needed to. And of course, you don't people have this idea, this, again, misconception that you'd have to charge every night, which you don't have to. It's also education. So I think in terms of uptake, I think we need constant education and don't treat people like they should already know things, and that's what my big thing is. No
Mm,
question is stupid. Most of the people who follow me are women, and they're 35 to 55 on Instagram, and it's you've just gotta keep it simple, don't overcomplicate it, and keep going back to the basics because I always come from the viewpoint that people are coming from 0 knowledge. 0 knowledge, and quite often they are, but they're willing they're considering it as their next car, and that's the big thing as well, which is why I think the numbers will start to improve and improve because the survey after survey, huge percentages of people say they're considering an EV as their next car, and that gives me hope because they know.
yeah. Well, for those who don't already follow Electrify This, I really highly encourage you to do so. It's a really fantastic stuff that Sarah's doing, and if you're looking at a place to source information that can really help untangle what can feel like a pretty complex topic, which is electrification and electric vehicles, then yeah, I really encourage you to go check that out. So, Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us at the Driven Podcast today. It's been really fantastic. So, and love all your work. So, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks to our sponsor Zeekr, and don't forget to follow the Driven Podcast if you don't already, and check out some of the latest reviews on the Driven website. Otherwise, stay tuned. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with the next episode. Until then, take care.